At its peak, the influence of Venice stretched from Cyprus to Dalmatia and Istria to the Alps. Despite its humble beginnings and relatively small size, the Venetian city-state rose to an empire that stood as a political and economic superpower during the Middle Ages. Now, the small city is a simple tourist destination that brings in millions of people per year. How did this once prosperous and dominating empire become a city known for its canals and beautiful architecture? Welcome to Cracked History Facts. Today, we'll be breaking down the rise and fall of the once prosperous Venetian Empire. For this video, we've broken down the most significant aspects of Venice's rise to power and eventual collapse. Whether you're studying for an exam or are a history fan, we're happy to have you here. During the 5th century AD, Europe faced an ongoing invasion from the Germanic and Hun tribes, forcing refugees to find solace on the coasts of the Mediterranean Sea. Over time, and with the protection of the Roman Empire, a concentrated cluster of communities formed and elected their first doge, leader. This was the beginning of what we now know as Venice. Because of the unusual geography of Venice, the Venetians' capacity for maritime commercialism and warfare was extraordinary. Despite its size, Venice was a force to be reckoned with, fending off multiple attacks during its initial development due to the protection provided by its lagoons. However, geography also proved troublesome when it came to natural resources. So, out of necessity and opportunity, Venice positioned itself as the primary trading hub between the East and the West. In the beginning, the Venetians' prominence in economic success was attributed mainly to salt, regarded as the state's foundation by its people. That Venetians also exported textiles, glass, and soon-to-be boats. Despite the ongoing success, the Venetian coastlines and trade routes became infested with wandering bands of pirates and thieves. In response, the Venetian government developed a navy to combat the ongoing threats. The navy and its famous flagship, the Gully, succeeded in their quest, warranting the Venetians to build a giant shipyard called the Arsenal. Venice utilized its advanced strategies to produce its ships at an unprecedented rate. Records have shown that at its peak, the Venetians could build an entire boat per day, a marvelous feat for its time. Through salt and tactile exports and ship manufacturing, Venice was well on its way to solidifying itself as a political and economic superpower. The economic exploits of Venice paved the way for its success, but the political ventures of its government made the difference and streamlined its prominence to power. Unlike its Italian neighbors, the trade of Venice followed a state-oriented system, meaning that the Republic would fund the development of boats, hire sailors, and then send them out for business. The state's control helped standardize and revolutionize the trade center, helping Venice to meet the demands of the expanding European markets and solidify an edge over its competitors. Venice did not convey itself as a conqueror, but as a potential trading partner, and began building ports near trade-related countries. All of this culminated during the Fourth Crusade when crusaders needed ships to reach Egypt. The Doge at the time capitalized on this opportunity, aiding in the sacking and looting of Constantinople. The fall of Constantinople gave Venice vast wealth and prestige. Thanks mainly to the Adriatic Sea's maritime opportunities and trade routes, Venice could seize trade routes otherwise unavailable to its competitors. With a state-oriented trade system, an efficient and stable government, and expert political navigation, Venice rose to great power, setting itself as the center of the world. But such is the way, what goes up must come down. At the height of the Republic, the small city-state was, in reality, a merchant empire capable of warfare that would rival even the Ottomans in the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. Venice, at its peak, was a force to be reckoned with within the Mediterranean. Its decline and eventual collapse is a cautionary tale that we have seen many times in history. The steady decline of Venice began in the 15th century. The fall is due to various things, such as the rise of neighboring empires, the discovery of African trade routes, and the greed for power and land. The Venetians created a highly complex system of government that worked exceptionally well for their commercial exploits. However, it lacked when it came to enforcing policy changes at a fast rate. While the Venetian government became rigid, with checks and balances that prevented their capacity for change, Neighboring kingdoms like Spain and Islam were quickly becoming dominating empires of their own. Because of its size and subsequent manufacturing limitations, Venice could not keep up with its rivals' military development. Over time, the Venetians' geographical defense became redundant as long-range artillery was invented and utilized. Venice also found itself stuck in a position where they were trying to meet the demands of Islam and Spain, two empires with conflicting people and religions, Muslims and Christians. Maritime navigation improved, and competitors implemented trade routes along the African coast. The Atlantic trade routes had a severe impact on the success of Venice's naval system and commercial success. There now wasn't a direct line between the East and West. Instead, countries could create their own routes, and so Venice lost its monopoly over goods coming into Europe. The discovery of the New World, America, exacerbated the situation, so goods were also coming from the West. Europe began setting its sights outward and neglected the Central Sea that had been so vital to the success of the Venetians. Venice also began annexing nearby territories in an attempt to expand its empire. Scrimmages with nearby countries such as Genoa persisted and took a severe toll on both countries. Genoa fell over this conflict, and even though Venice was able to recover, the consequences were evident. Over time, the Empire of Venice declined, losing its ports and slowly shrinking back to just a city-state. Venice was still wealthy during this time, operating as the primary trading hub in the Mediterranean. However, after the Napoleonic Wars, Venice was annexed by the Austrians. Later, it was annexed again by the Kingdom of Italy during the Prussian Wars. Despite Venice's decline and collapse, the city retained most of its culture and social etiquette that garnered the interest of foreigners. The religious importance of the state and the lavish lifestyle continued to attract tourism, even during the 17th and 18th centuries. The Venetians saw an opportunity and focused on increasing their potential for tourism success. Art, entertainment, festivals, gambling, and prostitution are all but a few attractions that were in offer in Venice. Scholars reported that these morally questionable activities were a strong indicator of an economy in decline. Tourism became an extremely lucrative industry for Venice and was primarily responsible for curbing its economic degeneration. This success leads to the present day, where tourism remains Venice's dominating industry, receiving up to 36 million tourists yearly. However, the number of tourists puts massive pressure on the city's old and declining infrastructure. As time goes on, the historical presence of Venice slowly diminishes. The fall of Venice is a story that we've seen many times before. The expansion of neighboring kingdoms, commercial competitors, and the terrible temptation of all empires to begin to expand. Venice's cultural high during the 16th and 17th centuries paved the way for curbing the economic decline and facilitating itself as a tourist industry that remains today. Will Venice ever rise to power it once had? Unlikely. However, we can say that Venice, the city we know and love, will be here for a long, long time. Thanks for watching, and until next time.